So we've hit the 1 p.m. mark. We're on live now, and we've got a ton of people joining us today. So the topic again is crowdfunding in 2021 and strategies to accelerate your e-commerce business growth. I think we've had many lessons from 2020. A lot of things have changed in our lives. A lot of areas that have grown significantly, and I guess the online world has accelerated 10 years forward just in the matter of 6 to 9 months. With that being said, I'd love to do a couple of introductions on our guests. We've got some unbelievable guests today. So myself, I'm the VP of Sales and Marketing at eShipper. eShipper is an online platform enabling small and medium-sized businesses to save up to 80% on shipping. But we don't stop there. We focus our journey and our customers' thought process on sales and marketing so that they can leave logistics to us. Key part of logistics is thinking about the first mile and bringing your products in from your manufacturers, being able to scale using a facility outside of your own, like a 3PL. So we do the fulfillment and warehousing. And then shipping becomes, just a science to us, right? We've used analytics, algorithms, and made it really, really simple for businesses not only to save, but to also accelerate their growth and their profitability. With that being said, I'd like to jump onto Jonathan. So JC, as he's better known, is the CEO of Agency 2.0 with 7 years under that business. He looks after new revenue and strategic partnerships. Some of the phenomenal things I read this morning about JC is they've raised $75 million in projects all over the world, including North America, China, and so on. So, an expert really in being able to curate the right product, the right way of getting your product out there, and making sure that the audience who wants to buy your product knows exactly what you sell. 400 plus consumer launches. And what was astounding is in the crowdfunding world, you are actually a title holder of 4 unique awards, which is raising the highest crowdfunding projects on things like e-bikes, drones, chargers, etc. So unbelievable guest. Thank you so much for being with us today, JC. Maybe you want to spend 30 seconds to a minute, give us a little bit of a high view on Agency 2.0 and what you guys specialize in.
Yeah, thanks for that intro, Tiaz. And Agency 2.0 was the very first crowdfunding agency in the industry. We really got ahead of the game with Facebook ads and doing some really interesting marketing strategies and techniques, all within crowdfunding, specifically Kickstarter and Indiegogo. And I knew we had something special when we launched one of the very first electric bikes on Indiegogo. And the first day we raised nearly $1 million. Wow. And that product, the Saunders e-bike, went on to do 20, 30 different versions of it. I think they've sold now over 100,000 bikes worldwide, doing phenomenally well. That client now just launched an electric motorcycle and is also building an electric car. So just the journey from we have this prototype and we want to launch it on crowdfunding to now we're getting in electric vehicles and taking on to like almost a publicly traded company over there. That just shows you the kind of space that we're in, and it gets me really excited. So for Agency 2.0, we take small brands, products. We're very lucky and humbled to be a part of our clients' first product launches and many second, third. And so for us, we just put together the marketing and the strategy on how to be successful and execute that plan on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and now with our new partner network and relationships, e-commerce clients on Amazon and Shopify and many other sites as well.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, JC. Our next guest is Blair Forrest from AMZ Prep. So he's the founder of AMZ Prep, founded this business whilst at university, and has been able to grow it at an unbelievable rate. They help businesses sell on Amazon. He's won an award. He's won awards as the best student entrepreneur in the country, the fastest growing startup in Kitchener. And a ton of different articles been written about his quick growth and grasp of the Amazon world. I know we've been on a bunch of calls together where Blair not only talks really, really well about what happens on Amazon and how to accelerate your growth, but fundamentally, he's found areas that a lot of people and brands haven't been able to find. So Blair, take it away. Give us a little bit of a breakdown on the business you run and a little bit about how you support businesses today.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Tiaz. And thanks for the kind words. I think you almost shot me over the moon. But I from our organization, we help brands sell on Amazon. So we manage almost every angle of the customer journey, everything from back office logistics. So we have fulfillment warehouses that are Amazon enabled, all the way to the advertising, content optimization, and photography too. So you can envision it almost the start to finish, a 360-degree solution built for Amazon. So it was, we've built it. We're still incredibly young, around now 35 months into it. So we're growing rapidly, and it's exciting. We've really much bred ourselves on the Amazon ecosystem. So from a day-to-day relations, we live and breathe it. So I'm super excited for this conversation. Hopefully where I can add value is providing a different angle on where we transition and graduate from crowdfunding campaigns, which is always a topic of conversation that I know me and JC talk about with the different clients coming in. So I'm super excited to, and thanks so much for hosting.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. So we have a jam-packed event here. I think there's 4 main areas we're going to be focusing our time on today. We do have 1 hour to get through it all, and we will try and muster as much as we can within that hour, but we may go over a few minutes just to ensure we answer all the questions and go through all the insights. So just to give you a high view of the agenda today, we're going to be doing a quick introduction into crowdfunding. There's a lot going on in the space and kind of understanding whether this is something that fits your business and how it fits best within your business. We're going to spend a lot of time on predicting costs, whether that is your marketing costs or your shipping and fulfillment. We're going to talk a lot about strategy and what's worked in crowdfunding and what hasn't, which area of crowdfunding you want to be on. And there are a ton of crowdfunding landscapes and areas that you can work with. So we'll focus on Kickstarter and Indiegogo because those are the 2 biggest ones that we know of. And then Blair will spend a little bit of time really talking about how you go from Kickstarter to actually running an e-commerce business end to end, and how to really muster the ability of taking the success of a Kickstarter campaign into running a fully fledged e-commerce business, and also being able to kind of move into marketplaces and other areas where you can deploy your product and get more of an audience. So with that being said, let's jump straight into it and talk a little bit about the crowdfunding landscape. So what do we know about crowdfunding today? It is a global market expected to reach $114 billion in 2021. In 2018, it was at $84 billion. So you can see that there is a constant growth in this market. And as I see it, being a beginner and a learner in crowdfunding, it is probably the area you spend the time to ensure bringing the new product to market or bringing a new SKU into the market and being able to get the credibility that it is worth spending the time marketing and spending the time in bringing that product to life. Projects in North America specifically generate $17 billion per year. And there's a specific growth of around 30% year on year in crowdfunding. So when it comes to projects, nothing is slowing down. I think there's more and more people getting into this area. And it's about really being able to find the right way to do it and being able to sustain that growth as you move into the e-commerce world. One thing we're going to talk about today is what to look out for and what you need to do really, really well and what you need to look at as a risk, because only 1 in 5 projects actually have a success rate. A success rate is measured based on what you are trying to achieve in terms of numbers from a crowdfunding campaign. And JC will really tune into a little bit more about what success means and how it works. Some of the industries we've seen really do well in crowdfunding are specifically board games, video games, electric vehicles, as JC mentioned, going from a scooter to a fully fledged public business running vehicles and so on and so forth. We have a very good existing relationships with a lot of board game manufacturers, and we've seen board games go crazy in 2020 as people are spending more time at home and people are looking for more ways to engage their children as well as themselves on the weekends and the evenings and also during the daytime. So we will touch a lot on how we can help existing e-commerce businesses as well as new e-commerce businesses. And we also want to turn the table around and say, if you run a Kickstarter campaign, how do you go into e-commerce and actually sustain a business that will keep your livelihood going? So with that being said, it gives you a real understanding of how large this market is and where it's going in the next few years. JC, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear a little bit about you. Have you got anything else to add on the landscape of crowdfunding, as well as give us a little bit about, what are the different types of crowdfunding you've seen and worked with, and kind of a mirror of what's really worked well for you?
Sure, absolutely. I think that's a great breakdown initially, because it sets up globally how big this industry is. And what I'm really most proud of is, we were early in on the game, and we've been working with clients that are launching games or technology or toys, which is really cool. But what you're seeing today is that is more evolved into other branches of crowdfunding, not only from equity crowdfunding, where actual businesses can issue shares to unaccredited investors. I mean, it's come a long way to, you have the GoFundMes of the world, where they're raising funds for good causes all around the world. So from the social utility, from politics to technology, it really has just grown remarkably fast and has evolved. In our industry, in products and launching hardware products, you look at the two biggest rewards-based platforms in the business, and that's without a doubt Kickstarter and Indiegogo. And what you've seen over the last couple of years is other countries developing their own forms of these platforms, from Taiwan, South Korea, China, Japan, and they're focusing more on local entrepreneurs launching products that might fit better to locally their community than, say, North America or Europe. But over the last 10 years, I've never seen the business this healthy. And you look at crowdfunding and you have a product or a service-based business, raise funds or pre-orders, there's really a number of different platforms you can go to. So the options are continuing to grow. But when you look at the two most popular, from rewards-based and equity crowdfunding, without a doubt, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and some of our partners and friends on the equity crowdfunding front, you're looking at sites like WeFunder and now Start Engine, who we've worked with on raising funds for an electric vehicle. They are now running ads on TV, have partnered with, Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank. So you can see the gravity and the high profile of these platforms continuing. It's pretty amazing.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. And one thing that I read up recently when I was doing my research is that a lot of crowdfunding campaigns, whilst the successful ones eat up and get their funding within a day or within hours, I found that a majority or a big part of crowdfunding campaigns actually accelerate towards the end of their expiry date. Is that something you've seen too? Because I think one of the key items that plays a big part into if that theory stands true is, how do you predict all and what's going to happen with the number of backers and where the backers come from? So do you find in your research and your work that a lot of campaigns tend to get their funding really, really quickly, or do you find that backers kind of start to wake up towards the end once they've seen other people join the cart?
Yeah, it's really a combination of both. It's kind of like that new independent movie that a few of your diehard movie fans saw and just can't stop talking about. And then the next thing you know, everyone's talking about this cool new indie movie, and then everyone's watching the theater, and it's just like, wow, this thing traveled by word of mouth. And that tends to happen on crowdfunding as well. Where we come in at Agency 2.0 is we kind of orchestrate this word of mouth, and we do a lot of this through marketing strategies before we launch the campaign. And this is what we call our pre-launch process. And really, without getting too technical into it, we're running a moderate or modest-sized ad campaign through Facebook and Instagram, and specifically targeting people that we feel would be interested in this new product, whether it's an electric bike or some new kitchen gadget or a video game. And we're also bringing in a lot of the data that we've collected from previous Kickstarter or crowdfunding backers, because it's very important that you reach them. This is very much a tribe or a community of early tech adopters.
Yeah.
all over the world. So it's really important that you target them because, granted, these are big platforms, but there are still many people out there that don't know what Kickstarter is or Indiegogo. They're still unfamiliar with how crowdfunding works. They're very much, focused on Amazon Prime, give me this product tomorrow. So there's some educating there that we as an agency and the platforms continue to do to grow the base of crowdfunding backers. But nonetheless, our marketing team is very focused on testing the product across various audiences and customers, projecting to them what the value is of backing this campaign, whether you're getting a discount or whether you're seeing a cool new product that's not on the marketplace yet. And that's what gets really exciting because in today's age, any entrepreneur out there in small business, there's so many tools available at low cost to try out your product, test it in front of real customers and audiences and get that feedback. And that's really what gets exciting. And we've really formed a great process around that for our clients in testing how their product is received by people on Facebook and Instagram, and then also collecting signups of potential customers. So there's a lot of work that goes in prior to launching a Kickstarter campaign. And if we do our work right, just as we launched today, we had a campaign launch this morning about 3 hours ago. It's now surpassed 50,000 on Kickstarter. We just launched that today. You can kind of, it doesn't feel like it's magic. I mean, there's a lot of money that went behind creating advertisements and getting up this momentum. So that's all just starting the fire. And then what we really want to do is have that organically grow and have people by word of mouth share, engage, talk. And that's who this community is on Kickstarter. They will talk, share. They're very interested in following the project and understanding how the entrepreneurs made it. And that's what makes Kickstarter a special platform to launch a new product is this type of audience, really.
Amazing. And how does a business owner or an entrepreneur decide if crowdfunding is the right place for them?
Sure. So starting with rewards-based crowdfunding, Indiegogo and Kickstarter, we're very fortunate as one of the early agencies to be in this industry. We still get a significant amount of really awesome projects every single day. It's really cool. It's almost like we have our own little Shark Tank in our office.
Yeah.
We evaluate all the different projects. And, for us, we know what we're good at doing. So we're very selective in the types of projects that we feel fit the mold on Kickstarter. You have to look at the demographics that are on Kickstarter and Indiegogo and crowdfunding. You have to look at the product features. What are they offering different than, what, say, Blair and his team at Amazon have seen, in similar categories. And then lastly, the opportunity. How much is the product and what's that value point? So when you kind of line all those pieces up, we know right away that this could be a home run or this could be something that might take a little bit more difficulty to get across to customers. It's a hard product to market. For example, we had a project come in. It was a giant coffee table, but it was actually a giant iPad, and it was an arcade one-up infinity game table that had every single board game built into it.
Yes.
And I looked at it in 5 minutes and said, this is a home run. And luckily, we were able to secure the client. We launched the campaign 2 months later, and it was $1 million campaign. But over the years, you kind of develop we know who this audience is, and we find or try to look for products that fit that mold. And it can be anything from chargers to backpacks, shoes. I would recommend anyone in the audience to spend a little time just researching some of the top funded campaigns on Kickstarter and Indiegogo to really get a good grasp on what's trending right now. But we're seeing a lot of new cool trends as well across various categories.
Okay. That's really interesting, and I want to build on that throughout this presentation because I think there's a lot of nuggets of experience and expertise that you're going to be able to throw upon our audience today. So let's move into what we've learned from 2020 when it comes to crowdfunding. What have you found, the difference between, let's say, 2019 and 2020 was with COVID and everything else that happened?
Yeah, like with any industry, it was really sad to see, in a lot of ways, business slow down. With the product launch community and industry, we didn't see a slowdown in new projects coming because these have been taking years to work towards a prototype and launch. And unfortunately, with the scares and the pandemic, we recommended and advised our clients to hold off launching until things kind of calmed down a little bit. And so by summer 2020, you saw a number of new campaigns start to launch again. And, we worked on an electric bike that raised over $7 million on Indiegogo. And so that's a $2,000 bike. So, there was a smaller volume of projects launched on both platforms, and the platforms would verify this, but there was a higher volume of funds contributed. So across the market, what we were taking from some of our peers and colleagues in the marketing space was, yes, big brands were slowing down on marketing. However, that left the room open for micro brands and smaller companies to put their ad dollars in and compete for those similar audiences. So it kind of offset a little bit. But with crowdfunding, I'm so impressed with the entrepreneurs and the small businesses that we're lucky to receive their inquiries. And I'll tell you why, because this business went from, I don't have any money, I have a couple sketches, it's just me, one-man team. And that's what I love about crowdfunding. It started with that type of creator. Now, fast forward to today, it's a much more seasoned team. Folks who have experience in their previous jobs or professional experience are coming together, doing their research. They understand crowdfunding much more and what it takes to be successful. And so they come to us, and most of them are ready to go. And they're looking for us to kind of put the pieces to the puzzle together, bring in our ad marketing specialists, and really optimize these campaigns. So I have seen a combination of the creators and the community both growing and evolving and making the platform and the idea of crowdfunding a safer, more confidence and trustworthy type of platform that it was, years and years ago. And that just comes with experience and knowledge and the growing base of the community in crowdfunding.
Perfect. I want to touch on 2 points you made earlier. I think first and foremost, to me, running an e-commerce business, while there is this passion and an emotion from an entrepreneur, it is down to a science. There's essential things that you need to look out for when you're trying to project a new product or a new business into the market. And you find with serial entrepreneurs, research is the one thing that comes up all the time. Do your research well, know your audience, your community, and so on. And you talked a lot about community on the Kickstarter side. We have a question here around, how do you access or recommend how much funds are required for a launch? So if I wanted to launch a new product in the market, what's the science behind, the advice that you would say to me as to this is what you need to be able to have aside from a marketing perspective, from a product manufacturing perspective, and so on?
Yeah, that's a great question. You could probably have a whole graduate business level course on that, to be honest. But in general, there's 3 big buckets that I like to say for any crowdfunding campaign, and this excludes obviously creating and building and all the time and effort going into creating the product. But by the time you get ready for a crowdfunding campaign, your first big expense is creating videos and photos, which are really essential for any Kickstarter or Indiegogo campaign. And the reason is because people are a little bit more weary of products that aren't quite ready yet. You only have a rendering or a few drawings. They're looking for real photos, seeing the product in action. So that could be the difference. Even when we're running ads for you, the performance based on those assets is really critical. So that's the first big expense, is videos and photos. And they typically take, if our team is doing it, around 6 weeks. We just shot several projects in Los Angeles and San Francisco. And just given the pandemic, it's been a really difficult struggle to get a lot of those projects completed. However, that's your first big expense. The second one you got to think about is your ad budget. You're going to be spending money to collect email signups in our pre-launch. And then you're obviously going to be spending money when the campaign goes live to build and scale and grow the campaign. So those 2 numbers, they vary, they really do. What the platforms and what we will advise clients is, before you launch on Kickstarter or Indiegogo, you really have to have a substantial base of interested customers who have seen the product on ads and signed up for it. They understand the pricing and the opportunity. And for me, especially with the competition now, I'd like to have at least 10,000 emails of potential backers before we launch. And that just shows you, when you have that type of number, like today we launched this morning, we've crossed 50,000 on a campaign on day 1. There's a lot that comes to that. But it really is having a base behind you before you launch. So, then you can kind of get into the weeds about how much did it cost per email sign up. And that really values on the product too. What type of product is it a motorcycle, or is it a board game, or is it a new kitchen device? And that can vary, and depending on the price point as well. And then lastly, what ad budget can I anticipate for when the campaign is live? I will tell you from experience, this doesn't work across the board. And I know many of my colleagues and other agencies in the space, they push somewhat similar numbers, but a rule of thumb is, and it's a pretty wide range, so bear with me, but if you're looking to raise a certain figure, let's say $1 million, you really have to anticipate spending between 10 to 20% on ads. Not all at once, not in 2 days, but throughout the campaign. Many of our clients that have hit that mark have spent that amount of money on Facebook, Instagram, and Google. And of course, our object isn't to spend as much money on Facebook as possible. We really want the community and the platform to help bring in organic sales and help grow and explode the campaign. But when you have an innovative product, a very discounted price point, and a community of all like-minded heads that love cool new innovation, it just makes the perfect storm to have these types of conversions, which is really, really great on the e-commerce side of things. I mean, if you're getting 10 to 1, that's phenomenal. And that's typically where we come in and try to accelerate on the ads, is really pushing those types of opportunities with certain products. But we've actually created a crowdfunding campaign calculator, which we can share after this. It helps people plug in what type of funds they're looking to raise, and it'll kind of punch out some estimates of what to anticipate spending. But it's the number one question we always get.
Great, thank you for that. I think, to that point of it being a science and there being a very specific process to ensuring a great outcome, I think you nailed it with, there's stages that you have to think through, and there needs to be the right level of budget to have a serious campaign, seeing the end-to-end growth of it. I'm going to go through some questions now, just because I think there's really been some. So I'll go to Philip. Philip's question is a little bit long, so I'll try and read it out. What is the ideal stage to engage in crowdfunding? With no capital or basic ideation, as JC mentioned? Or is it worth doing it after investing substantially yourself and need some support for final stages? So I think the idea is, where do you see the right time for somebody to say, I'm going forward now, it's worth it, and let's put the money into it?
Yeah, it's a great question from Philip, because, I would say my answer 5 years might be a little bit different. I mentioned, the entrepreneur in the garage who's got some form of prototype and drawings and ideation. Fast forward to now, what we have seen are customers or clients or creators, I should say, whose product is already at the prototype stage. It looks polished enough to take professional videos and photos. And that's what we would advise when you're ready to start the pre-launch ad campaign. Because the reality is, if the product is still kind of being baked out, you see Facebook, Instagram, everybody gets targeted with ads. You got to look as if, and you really got to bring your best stuff. And I would say it's great for the backers, because it means their product is going to ship much sooner than it did 5 years ago. But the negative side is for creators like Philip and entrepreneurs, they still need capital to get off the ground. I'm in the middle right now working on a really cool project with a close friend of mine in Texas, and we're going through the exact same struggles as Philip is. We're chatting with different companies in Shanghai and Shenzhen, and these costs to just put a prototype together can be very expensive, and there's a lot of risk there. We don't know if we'll get it right the first time. It may take 3 or 4 prototypes before we get it right. But when it comes to crowdfunding, my best advice into engaging, because the bar has now been set very, very high. We work with clients like the founder of Atari, Cooler Master, Duracell. These folks have product that is already ready to go, and the backers on Kickstarter are really anxious. They'll support you and they'll wait, but the closer you are to shipping, the better off your campaign will result. I think if you're shipping any more than a year away from when you launch your Kickstarter campaign, and your price point is high, that's really gonna knock a lot of people out. It's just a lot of risk for them to take. But that's the landscape that I would see when you're ready to engage in crowdfunding and contact a company like ours.
Fantastic. So we have a few more questions, but we'll get to those. Kate and John, thank you so much for your questions there. We will get to them at some point within the presentation. Moving on, I think one of the points you made there was around shipping times, and between when you're promoting your campaign to when it's actually ready to go out. So moving into the next slide here, there's a thought process on what are the essentials when it comes to shipping and fulfillment. And Blair, I want you to jump in here too and put your thought process through, because I know as a AMZ Prep organization, there are tons of Kickstarter campaigns that you've been able to work through and help in making a success from a shipping and fulfillment perspective. Mm-hmm. At the eShipper and eShipper Plus side, we tend to run 5 to 10 campaigns on a monthly basis. And we have a lot of board games that come through our facility. And we've seen a variety of different types of shipping questions that come up. So we'll go through the essentials, which are key to building it out. And wherever you guys feel is necessary, please jump in and feel free to comment on experience. So I think when it comes to transit times and shipping times, it's really, really key that you're using the right type of providers to get your product out. But at the same time, it's also really key that as a entrepreneur who is looking to ensure that the client feels that they've got a good service, they may have purchased your product for a few $100 or a few $1,000. Shipping times are really, really important. And I think what is really important is you need to use that to your strategic advantage. Like, plan it out really, really well. Think it through and make sure that you understand what the cost impact is between going on a slow ground shipment as opposed to something that's going by air. The packaging has always come up as an issue, whether it's a Kickstarter campaign or an e-commerce business, right? The trade-off is between how much do I want to showcase my brand when the unboxing happens, as opposed to how much can I actually spend on dead weight or dimensional size of the box and the way it looks. So I think, work with organizations and people who are experts in the shipping industry to find the right trade-off, because from a Kickstarter campaign, as JC mentioned earlier, backers are waiting for these products, and it may not be coming within 2 days of them purchasing or buying or investing in the product. So when they do finally get it, as the project completes and it's been a success, they want to have that unboxing effect too. So it's really important that you find the right trade-off. And obviously, within the industry as well as within the world, climate change is a huge topic. So work with packaging that's sustainable and also fits the audience that you're working with. Kickstarter is a community that does a variety of crowdfunding campaigns. And a lot of backers and a lot of people are very conscious about how the people that they invest in are working to save the environment and the climate. The next point is about streamlining your first mile delivery. And when we say that, we're talking really about, depending on where your manufacturer is and how you're bringing your product into, whether it's Canada, US, China, wherever your fulfillment center is going to be, streamlining that first mile of logistics comes with a variety of challenges. We're going into Christmas, New Year. Chinese New Year now, right? And the Chinese are going to go away for a month and enjoy themselves and drink and, party. And that means that anything that you're planning to bring in February, you're going to have to think through if that's even realistic and possible now. So first mile logistics is about whether you're using sea or air, bringing that product into the country and custom clearing it and paying duties and taxes on it until it gets to your fulfillment hub, where they then start to do the pick and pack and that type of process. The other thing you mentioned, JC, which was diligent and very important, is I've now bought a product and I've backed your campaign. I don't know when exactly this product is going to reach my facility. But as you start to communicate with me, it's really important as a backer. I have a tracking number. I'm able to see where that shipment is at any one time. And there is a thought process on, final mile tracking, a trackable service. If it's going international, tracking is really expensive. A trackable service is really expensive. So work with the right partners, with the right carriers to ensure you have at least some predictable cost on what it's going to be like in order for you to use a tracked service. I think one thing that's specifically important, and people now take it for granted as something that is essential, is technology, right? Being able to move your orders from Kickstarter to the shipping company that you're going to be working with, creating your labels, and be able to really quickly throw out your tracking numbers to your backers. That's one part of it. We recently did a Kickstarter campaign for 12,000 backers. And the company we were working with, we emphasized so much on the fact that technology, number one, plays a huge part in being able to seamlessly automate processes that you may need to run. But more importantly, communicate with your backers. Your backers want to know when their product will be coming. Now, if you think about 12,000 back orders, that's probably anywhere from 6 to 20 container worth of product coming in. And those containers don't dock into Canada at the same time. They come in one at a time, staggered, in a way that the shipping company and the manufacturer is able to get that product out. So communication was key for this brand, because if Blair received his product and has now gone online and started celebrating that his product is great and feels so soft and it's brand new and so on and so forth, and JC may have actually bought that product before Blair, but because JC lives in the UK as opposed to Blair living in Canada, JC now goes online and writes really bad reviews because he's pissed that even though he bought this product first, he didn't receive it before Blair. So communicating with your audience as to when they're actually going to receive their products, and it is a staggered approach, and these are the dates that each country is going to be receiving their orders. If you're a backer from any one of these, expect your orders at this time in this fashion. I think that is one thing that we did really, really well, is to be able to communicate the message really clearly with all the backers, and giving that level of education to the merchant or the Kickstarter owner to say, this is how you want to stagger your approach based on whether it's country, whether it's spend, and so on. One thing that comes to mind with board games is, a board game can come with 12 different SKUs, and you can have 12,000 backers who all bought 1 to 12 SKUs each. So fulfilling that is a nightmare, because you're now dealing with 3,000 orders for one SKU, and then 6,000 orders for 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 SKUs. And it becomes a real nightmare if you don't have a process to the madness. So I think with that being said, it's always best to gauge where you're going to finish in terms of the number of backers, and really being able to predict what the next cycle looks like after the marketing is all complete. With that being said, there's a bunch of questions that have come up, but Blair and JC, did you have anything specific that you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I think what we've seen twofold with some of the most recent Kickstarters, because they're pretty constant. It's incredible to see the success, but the one part is setting the right expectations. So ironically, there was a Kickstarter one that we just spoke to. It was around 2 weeks back, and they got around 4,000 kickbacks on the funding project, but they actually got it sent to their home. So they're calling us, basically freaking out, trying to figure out how they're going to be able to fulfill these over 15 plus SKUs that all arrive basically to their home. So and we've seen this pretty much be a trend, that the fulfillment, or kind of the last piece, which is arguably one of the most important with a successful campaign, is just really making sure you have the logistics down. And then what MT has added on is, from a customer experience standpoint, we have to reinforce that this is going to be a lifetime long customer. We're not just considering a one campaign, as Jonathan has very much built these huge groups and fan bases for loyal campaigns. It's understanding the customer experience. So whether that's setting proper shipping expectations, whether that's branded boxes and customer experience, or just making sure shipments go on time, and you have a support structure to make sure you notify and communicate with the thousands of backers. It's the smaller nuances that usually make or break some of the last step, which is the branding aspect and the customer journey. But it's something that we've seen with some of the most recent campaigns. It's just something that people are leaving to last minute, which we're almost trying to reinforce the flip on its head and make it just at least one of the top priorities moving forward, because it's just a place we just don't want to break glass too early.
That's right. I'll just add, and for everyone there that's watching, really pay attention to this segment, because I've done hundreds of campaigns, and you guys are busy. You're focused on your product. You're focused on your business. You're focused on paying your employees and costs. And I understand that shipping can at times get the back burner. I'll get there when I'm ready to ship. And I would heavily advise against that. And when you have, teams like eShipper now and these resources available, it's one of the first introductions we make to any of our clients. And the reason is, once we start advertising who you are and what your price points are, we have already, to some degree, factored in what that shipping cost will be. And if you're shipping in the crowdfunding space, North America is 60% of who you'll be shipping to, 30% is the EU, 10% is all across Asia, and don't forget Australia, New Zealand. These are some of the biggest territories that will back your product, and you need to have a plan in place. And sometimes it might be too expensive. Don't forget about taxes and duties, and there's a lot of politics involved. So have experts help you with this. Put that in the bottom line. It really does affect the overall campaign. And from an optics level, when we launch your Kickstarter project and we have all the pricing and territories mapped out, when the customer gets there, like, oh, wow, these guys got it together. This is going to come. It only instills confidence. And as Blair rightfully said, this could be a long-term client or customer. And it's about that experience. This is how you build a brand. It really is shipping product, getting the customer reviews, taking care of them. And that starts with, having experts to help you. You need help. It really does take a village to launch a product. And I would highly, highly recommend getting in touch with eShipper and these teams to guide you through that process. You need someone that every day knows the market, knows the components and the pieces to help you build this strategy. You really do.
Absolutely. So just sticking on shipping for another couple of minutes, there are a couple of questions that have come up. Somebody has asked about the services that we can provide in North America, and somebody asked about integrations and technology. So I think between the two, we'll try and nail them both down. When it comes to services, I think there are a ton of services eShipper can offer you, but it's not always us trying to do it all for you. I think the more important part is, where do we accelerate and do really, really well? And where do we have partners that can really support? Because I think with any one company out there, you are not able to touch every single market when it comes to shipping. There are certain businesses and certain carriers that are good for certain markets, as opposed to certain carriers doing really well in North America compared to the Middle East or Australia and so on. And our expertise is in consulting you and being able to understand what your product looks like. How heavy is it? Is it dangerous material? Does it require FDA clearance? What are the duties and taxes in different markets? And being able to really give you a predictable model that allows you to work with the likes of Agency 2.0 to market your product in the market you really want, right? We know of crowdfunding campaigns that have stuck only to North America because they have so many regulations. For example, PPE material in 2020 was really, really big on Kickstarter. And the reason was because people were coming up with a variety of innovative ways to wear a necklace, a bracelet or a watch that also allows you to get sanitizer and things like that. So there are a ton of different things that come into creating your shipping strategy, and there is no one company that can do it all. So we have great partners for Europe, we have great partners in the Middle East, and we have great partners in Australia. When it comes to Africa, we have carriers here that are really good in those markets. So it comes with a variety of consultation and ensuring what your product is. When it comes to technology, there's a variety of solutions you can put together. So from a Kickstarter perspective, you do have to kind of go back to some CSV files and uploads and downloads. But because we have the technology to work with that, we would forefront that on your behalf, and we would have some of our account managers really talk you through what is required on your end and what our steps would be. So I think when it comes to shipping, it's not a one size fits all, and that's something you need to understand with JC's recommendation of looking at shipping as early as possible in order to predict as well as where you're going to spend most of your time. Now, we are running so fast on the time side, so I'm going to try and move on as quickly as we can because there's some really great content that we need to share. So moving into point number 2, which is around strategies and thinking through what a successful crowdfunding campaign looks like. Now, we've touched a lot on these topics already. So JC, if you don't mind, try and drill through some of these on the top level and let's try and keep the clock moving because we're at 1:45, and it's really fun talking to you guys. But I know we have such great content we've worked on, so let's try and keep moving. So when it comes to strategizing for a successful crowdfunding campaign, what are the key things you found that work really, really well?
Sure. I mean, just top line and looking at this slide, your idea, the innovation of it. One thing that our team does is we'll look for comparable products when a new project comes in our door. Can I find it on Amazon? What's the difference in features? What about the price point? Those are some of the two common denominators, because I will tell you on crowdfunding, this audience is very savvy, and they will also do the research. They'll take the time to see what you've put forth differently, and they will reward you for it, but they will also poke holes and try to poke holes in the campaign. So it's very important that we get our story straight. And that's what the features and the price point, the overall value of what we're offering here. Second, have that ad budget in place. Make sure that there's substantial funds for building an email list. These will be your customers forever, and it starts right during pre-launch. Marketing, of course, you need an ad manager expert, someone that knows what they're doing with Facebook, Instagram, Google, who can target audiences and bring in results that meet your requirements. And then with a delivery window, this goes back to shipping and having your product ready to go. Obviously you can't get that down to the exact day. There's delays. Even with companies like PlayStation, there's delays. But it's good to get ahead of that as much as you can. It's a forgiving audience on Kickstarter, but really try to narrow that range down of when you honestly think you can have the project ready. And as we discussed before, customer service, communication, I should say over communication with your backers is certainly key, because they are forgiving. As long as you keep in touch with them, they understand that this process of delivering product, your first one, is very difficult. So just be overly communicative is my best advice there.
We have a quick question here on this. Kimberly asked, do I need a prototype to launch a crowdfunding campaign?
Yes, and there's various forms of prototypes. There's fully functioning prototypes. For example, we have some types of drones that come with a companion app for your mobile phone. The app may not be ready. It's just a prototype, but mostly Kickstarter and Indiegogo, if you're projecting that you're in a prototype stage, and you can actually clarify that on Indiegogo, hey, we're in the prototype phase, so it's more transparent. I really like that Indiegogo has done this. As long as you're just forthcoming with the features that you're saying, for example, we did a drone and they said they had some type of follow technology. It was very new, and Kickstarter was very strict about saying, if you're claiming that you can do this with your product, we have to see proof in photos and videos. So just be aware of that. If you're making certain claims that your product does something really cool, that's great. But just count on the platforms asking some nice questions about making sure that it fits their trusty and safety teams, and that we're not misleading the Kickstarter community. That's the last thing you want to do.
That's really interesting. So JC, do I have to pick between Indiegogo and Kickstarter? Can I launch on both, or how do I decide what's better?
So based on both their terms of use, you can only be on one platform at a time. And I would recommend, based on your product, there's a lot of great case studies for Indiegogo. I'll tell you, we're launching electric bikes left and right. They pretty much own that market and a lot of others in the electronic space. And then we talked a lot about gaming and a lot of the board games that you guys do, which is the biggest category on Kickstarter. So when you are trying to decide which platform, I'd really focus on which one has a lot more of the case studies that fits kind of your category, because you can already tell that audience has seen it, and there is an audience on Kickstarter for this new cool kitchen gadget. I've seen a lot of kitchen gadgets launching on Kickstarter recently. It's really cool stuff. I've bought a few myself. So that would be my first thing, is to do some research on both platforms and see if you can find similar products that you like and see how well they did on either of the platforms.
Fantastic. So it does come down to community, right? It's all about where the community really is living in order for you to get the right type of backing. Perfect. Okay. With that being said, I think, again, we move back into shipping, because shipping is a big area we've had a lot of questions on, and when it comes to fulfillment and everything else. What we found from research, and I'm sure you've talked a little bit about it today, is shipping and fulfillment an afterthought? When is the right time to think about shipping and fulfillment? So I'll let you answer that, JC. When is the right time to think about shipping and fulfillment?
Boy, I'll tell you, our clients really they have their hands full with communicating with backers, focusing on their product. So it does tend to get, a bit of the back burner. But when you're putting your strategy together of launching a campaign, and as we mentioned before, you really want to start identifying who your shipping partner will be and learning the ins and outs of what it takes to deliver a product to your customer. And myself as well, I'm still learning a lot of this too. And understanding how much product do I need to order, or a lot of times when you're working with manufacturers overseas, there's a minimum order quantity. What is that? MOQ, what does that mean? If I have some type of lithium ion battery with my product, what does that mean for my shipping options? If my electric bike is a very powerful motor and Australia is claiming it as an actual vehicle and they won't let me into the port, I need to understand that before I market to Australia. So a lot of these things may not affect many of us with like a board game, but depending on your product, everyone could be different. And as you mentioned too, Taz, it's not one size fits all. And that's what I think is great with a lot of these shipping options, is really trying to identify what fits best for you. And I saw a quick question I could answer. How do I identify shipping prices for which countries I'm going to ship to? That's a great question. And I mentioned it earlier, but on crowdfunding, you can expect 60% of your backers will come from Canada, USA, 30% from the EU, the major countries of the EU, and then 10% in Asia, specifically Japan, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand. Granted, we get a lot of projects from China, but not a lot of backers from China. Maybe that has something to do with Facebook. They also have their own crowdfunding platform over there. Right. But you should focus on that. We don't see a tremendous amount of backers coming from South America, Africa, or the Middle East yet. So just kind of keep that in mind. And, I'm more than happy after the call to share a list of some of the most popular across the board territories that crowdfunding projects ship to.
That's great. I think a couple of things to state there actually with the shipping and fulfillment is think about not just the shipping cost, right? Think about fulfillment, think about customs and duties, think about getting your product internationally in from your manufacturer and out to your final mile customers. So it's really, really important to kind of have that thought process end to end. We want to move into distribution. So distribution can come in three parts, right? The first is, doing it yourself at home. And we've seen some great product and projects happening from home. Using a 3PL for a 360-degree solution. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then really using various partners in different continents or countries to be able to really get the best value for your money, as well as understanding that they probably have a better approach to things than you would from one place in the world. So let's start with the DIY approach. The great thing about the DIY approach is that some campaigns come between 2 and 500 products or 500 backers. These are pretty simple when you only have 1 or 2 SKUs to fulfill. And using your garage or using your home is a great way of utilizing, your space as well as your cost structure. The great thing about working with a company like eShipper, for example, is you'll still be able to take advantage of our rate structure. You'll still get an account manager. You'll still have the support as though you're working with us end to end. And we'll probably even be able to give you hints and tips on the way to best package your product, the best way to get it to the carriers, and so on and so forth. So there is a DIY approach. And with that being said, I think that the DIY approach just needs to be thought out and prepared correctly. But it is definitely an approach that's worked for tons of our customers. And we never say, don't do it yourself. It is worth doing it yourself when you have the right preparation and you've consulted the right type of partners to ensure that you've thought it through. A 3PL is a third-party logistics company. So, eShipper Plus is seen to be a 3PL in the industry. And a 360-degree solution really just means a 3PL like eShipper can help you to bring your product from your manufacturer, whether that's in India, whether that's in China, Sri Lanka, and so on, by sea or by air, help you clear customs into Canada or the US, and then being able to do the fulfillment and your day-to-day processes from our warehouse and delivery to final mile. So that covers your entire logistics and fulfillment process. This has worked really, really well for backers who are a small team, who are focused on the next step after the backers have received their product, who are really focused on communication, reviews, and so on and so forth, and are not trying to do it all themselves. And it also works for, the industries that have a number of SKUs, a really, really expensive product, and they're looking for a safe place that can scale with them, and a company that's kind of thought through 3 steps ahead, which is, I'm not just doing a Kickstarter campaign, but I want to move into e-commerce. Quickly touching on the fulfillment partners, eShipper works with partners in Europe, in Australia, and in the Middle East, and in China too. And we will recommend when it's the right time to engage another partner as opposed to doing it ourselves. So it's really important to just have that mindset that, one person doesn't have to do it all for you. And if you work with a 3PL similar to us, have that approach and ask the question about, do you have partners in various countries and continents that we can also utilize? So Nicholas, a 3PL basically means a third-party logistics company. With that being said, we can run into a few more questions as we keep going up. But somebody asked, does it cost to work with eShipper? Do I have to have a minimum number of orders? No, you don't. When you're working with eShipper Plus, which is our warehousing and fulfillment company, there are certain things that we want to be able to work with you on to ensure that it's even worth your time engaging a 3PL or a warehousing company. But those are things we do as part of our service and as part of our consultancy. I can see the time, and I really want to get Blair in to talk about his side. So we have, just a quick touch on the impact of shipping and fulfillment. I think the key 3 or 4 areas were built up in the slides that we talked about earlier. So the impact of shipping and fulfillment is going to really be on your bottom line and how much you want to be able to profit at the end of your campaign, and also make sure you don't run into a loss. Predicting your shipping costs ahead are really key. Companies like eShipper provide flat rate shipping for certain products in Canada. If you're using our warehouse, we have some phenomenal rates across the border. Things to think about as well is, if your product is over $800 in value, is it worth bringing that product into Canada for fulfillment, or is it worth going straight to the US? And those are questions we can really answer. Things that affect the shipping cost are your packaging, the weight and the size, the tariffs that are imposed. So we know there's a Trump tariff between the US and China. So those are the things that you really need to consider and take care of. Now, as we approach 1 p.m., guys, we are going to go a little bit over. So stay with us, or you can catch everything else afterward too. It's all recorded. But let's move into the next couple of slides where we're talking about a successful Kickstarter campaign and how to now transition that into an e-commerce business. I think a lot of the audience really wants to know the strategies that are in place, the options that are available. And I'll push it back to you, Blair. I think you've got a really good understanding of this concept and a lot of brands that we've worked with in regards to this process of transition. So take us away.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Imtiaz. And I think just echoing what you said before, a lot of it just comes down to margin, right? And it's something that we're going to reinforce, especially going into just some strategy, especially when you consider e-commerce as a whole. It's just the nuanced costs that people just don't consider is like your custom packaging, what's that last mile look like if you're using a fulfillment provider, if you need a shipping printing label, all things that we need to consider. But when we think about it, and JC and I, from a Kickstarter standpoint, have had a multitude of these conversations, is we have a lot of these very exciting conversations with brands that are almost just transitioning or finishing the last mile of their crowdfunding. And it's almost an elephant in the room, Imtiaz, of the conversation that we end up seeing. It's the now what question, right? They've had an incredibly successful crowdfunding campaign. They've got backers, they have manufacturing or production in process, but the next steps, they don't have anywhere else to sell it. They haven't thought about that far ahead, which is kind of the 3 steps ahead of where they're even going, because they're just so focused on kind of launching the actual crowdfunding campaign. So the way JC and I would call it, it's almost the graduation of Kickstarter or Indiegogo, and what that actually looks like for brands. So for brands graduating, a lot of what we usually heavily enforce is create the website, right? Whether it's a landing page or you have enough to really invest in a full website, build something so at least the backers can go somewhere to visit, to understand the branding, to communicate with you. Just make it a central place of home. It doesn't need to be something that is fully built out, but as simple as using there's tons of great platforms to create simple landing pages. Is just get something up there so at least your backers have somewhere to visit you and potentially provide them more information to at least build that customer awareness. Secondly is when we choose an e-commerce platform. So when you're thinking of the next steps of your crowdfunding campaign, we need to make sure that we have somewhere that they can actually purchase. So shooting it even back to you, Imtiaz, where have you seen from different e-commerce platforms? I know there's major ones like Shopify or WooCommerce, but for some of the brands that you've seen from a Kickstarter, where do you see these brands usually going to from a next graduation just to host their website?
I think it comes down to the amount of time they can invest in running an e-commerce business. Tons of them choose, the kind of easy access to Amazon and its marketplace, but a lot actually go through kind of the Shopify landscape, because Shopify has this ability to be able to integrate with Walmart marketplace, Amazon's marketplace, be able to pull and push SKUs in and out. It has a phenomenal community of apps and app developers. So we find that there's a ton of different types of individuals, depending on the amount of money they have to spend and the amount of time and resource they have to invest. They choose different marketplaces or e-commerce websites based on that.
Yeah, and we've seen it across the board, and I think the idea is get it somewhere and get it quickly. But from the next stages, let's build the website, have visibility for those brands, and make sure that we're nurturing backers. And I know JC has touched on this throughout the presentation, but understanding that we're building a brand, right? And when we get out of this thought process of not just a crowdfunding product, but an actual company and brand that we're building with potentially thousands of loyal customers, is we want to make sure that we're nurturing them. And I know JC could touch on probably 101 ways of how we can make sure that we reinforce these customers, but doing everything from what we've seen work is Facebook groups, doing live campaigns just like this, doing some sort of contest or keeping communication loops through email as well. The idea is just make sure that we have the relationship with them, so that whether that's your next crowdfunding campaign or the next continuous purchase, we have this more than just a one-to-one relationship with them.
Yeah, and I would say the customer experience too, like all of us, when we buy something, I want to see what the reviews say. Do they like the product? Did people respond to questions? So, I think the customer experience is becoming so important to the brand. It's almost up there with the product in a lot of ways, So you definitely want to make sure you're taking care of your base, your army, because if you do go from Amazon, a successful e-commerce business, like many of our clients do, they take with them all of these emails and customers to introduce them to the new product on Kickstarter. So it's a great way to segue from, I have a successful e-commerce business, I have a cool new product I want to try on Kickstarter that fits the mold. And it makes our job much easier because you have 10, 20, 30,000 customer emails that you could potentially reach out to. Same with social media. You have a built-in army of potential customers that we can reach out to and target. So yeah, it's important on a variety of so many levels, I would say, for any brand.
And I think on that is a great segue of what MTS has almost echoed throughout the entire presentation is the fulfillment. And I know that we considered Kickstarter fulfillment, but the exact same principles apply from an e-commerce fulfillment. Whether you're deciding to do the fulfillment from your own, let's say, garage or small retail shop, or potentially getting supported by a 3PL or actual fulfillment center that can actually help distribute those products. These smaller costs in place are going to be incredibly impactful on the revenue. So we need to make sure that we actually consider these, and speaking to organizations like eShipper and I, making sure that you really understand to a T every cost involved, whether that's the cost of your supplies, if you're getting a custom box, if you have eco-friendly poly packaging inside of it. It's the smaller things that we need to consider. And with that, it is the last piece of just getting started is that customer service, building an army of just loyal customer base. Jeff Bezos actually said it was a brand for a company is like a reputation for a person. You earn reputation trying to do the hard things well. And I think the idea of just making sure that from a customer service standpoint, especially during the final phases of that crowdfunding campaign, just make sure that we have systems in place so that tight communication, whether they want a tracking number or they want statuses or they need to find something specific regarding their shipping lanes or production times, they have this communication line, because we're building a lot more than just a one-off product. We're building the whole brand behind it.
Absolutely.
So go ahead, John.
I was going to say, Blair, I think from an e-commerce perspective, there's the shopping carts and being on an e-commerce website. But then I know a ton of people ask, how do I get into a marketplace, and which marketplace really looks good for me? How do I choose between the different marketplaces that are there? And can I be on all of them at the same time? Or like JC said, you can only be on Indiegogo or Kickstarter at any one time.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And we get it quite often, especially with some of these Kickstarter campaigns that just graduated. They're usually incredibly excited and they want to take over the world. And that comes with being everywhere at the same time. But for us, when we think about marketplaces, they can be an incredibly powerful tool. But with great power comes great responsibility. And the idea of just making sure that we diversify the brand, not just being reliant on, let's say, your own website, but also leveraging these marketplace channels that already have millions of customers. And of course, I'm going to lean my shoulder into Amazon. It's just because we see it every day and we speak the language. But when we consider all the other channels available, it stems a lot further than just, let's say, an Amazon-based business. The idea of selling your products on Walmart's marketplace, onto Google Shopping, eBay, Wish, Target, these are all incredible places, and they all have a very unique base of customers as well. A great example is even on the basis of some of these very niche products we've seen do incredibly well on Etsy, which is something that people just usually wouldn't consider. But every marketplace has its own niche customers, very similar to how JC saw it with Indiegogo and Kickstarter. Every marketplace can provide value, and it's just finding the right balance between them. So when we think about whether a product does well on Amazon, which is the buzz in the room for a lot of these backers, is we consider at the end of the day, Amazon's a search engine. So Amazon can be an incredibly powerful tool to get visibility to hundreds of millions of shoppers, really based off the idea. But things that we just need to consider, especially when we start thinking about marketplaces, is what type of product do you sell? So some products sell a lot stronger on Amazon, for example, but then some products just don't do as well. Also the seasonality of a product. So
just to interrupt you there, as part of the AMZ service catalog, this is a service that you provide, correct? So the market audit in regards to the type of product you're selling, and then almost how many people are selling it on, for example, a marketplace like Amazon. What are they selling it for? What is the revenues and profits that people are getting in this specific market? And then being able to also let clients know through a consultative approach which marketplace suits them best. So as a person leaving a Kickstarter campaign, they don't need to do it all themselves. When they reach out to an organization like yours or JC's, there's a ton of consultative information that you can both portray on where they need to focus their time on, where they need to spend their budget, and so on, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And we do it for a lot of the brands that we end up working alongside Agency 20 with regards to what the next steps look like for those brands. So we essentially, for a lot of the brands that approach us after a successful crowdfunding campaign or just an initial e-commerce brand, is we have what's called a marketplace audit. And it's basically just to understand visibility on each one of these channels. So understanding, is your price point sustainable? What's the competitive landscape look like? How big are the revenue numbers that we could potentially compete for? And what's this go-to strategy look like? Are we thinking Amazon.com and .ca? Are we thinking strictly stick to your own e-commerce website? Or are we finding this dual approach where we can almost take a very holistic tackle between 3 or 4 different marketplaces simultaneously?
Yeah.
So it's one of our cores, but the idea is at the end of the day, we just need to interpret data. Marketplace channels like Amazon and Google provide a plethora of data. And backing that with some of the already successful data that JC's company can provide from a crowdfunding campaign, we put this into the mix so that we can actually make decisions on whether your product will be successful on Amazon or you could dominate a Walmart marketplace. So every single product's different, and the approach that we have to take is incredibly holistic, but we put it down to a science. So we know almost the same way JC knows a $1 million Kickstarter to one that's going to be in its infancy. We can see a product and very quickly know, just based off of the data, whether it's going to be a hit on somewhere like Amazon, or we need to take a bit of a back approach and start to think about these third-party channels that may actually make up the final stretch.
Blair, let's actualize that, and this specific slide is great to do that. Do you have any specific examples? And again, let's try and breeze through it because we have run out of time. We're going to carry on for the next 10-15 minutes as long as the audience is okay with it. But do you have an example of a brand that you've been able to bring onto Amazon, whether they did a crowdfunding campaign or not, and how this market audit allowed them to pick the right place, the right cost structure, as well as how much money they spend on advertising?
Yeah, it's a great question, Imtiaz. And we're doing one actually right now in partnership with JC's company as well. So the way that we thought about it was this product is going for a very successful crowdfunding campaign in the automotive space. So when they came to JC's team and ours, the way that we needed to think about this was as they roll out crowdfunding, they wanted to make sure that they were already 3 steps ahead, which is an incredibly proactive approach. So the way that we took it in internally is we worked alongside JC's team to build out a 20 some odd page report full of data and analytics to understand, especially in the automotive space, who are the big players in the space and what sort of revenue are they doing. With that, we're also looking at a plethora of different keywords. At the end of the day, a place like Amazon, it all comes down to keywords, right? It's customers are going to Amazon because they want to buy something. So for them to search up a very specific keyword, whether that's a specific auto car type or if it's specific ceiling rack, the idea behind it is that these keywords will let us know how many people are actually searching them up. So we use this almost algorithmic process where we take a very data-driven approach to build out this beautiful presentation just to let brands, whether it's a brand new company that has no sort of backing yet, and they may have just got on, let's say, Dragon's Den, to give them validation on Amazon, all the way to a successful crowdfunding, and we're looking for the next steps to build kind of a go-to strategy. So it's super exciting, and we have the ability to use this data to our advantage. But when we think about Amazon, we just think about it as almost like a launch pad. So brands come to us daily and they say, but we want to go into our website. We want to control the customer. We want to have our own thing going. And we encourage it with both arms open, and it's a part of our holistic strategy. But where we view Amazon is it's an incredible launch pad. You're looking at the biggest marketplace on earth. So using this to just skyrocket your sales and get the brand visibility you need early on, you use this in parallel with your own e-commerce strategy to almost create this perfect marriage between the two, where Amazon provides visibility to millions of new customers, and then your website starts to nurture your backers that you're already working with. So there's a science behind what you have to do between the two, but the idea is that if you can find this perfect synchronous between the two, it just makes for a very successful post-crowdfunding success.
And you touched a little bit on it, but how do you win on Amazon, or how do you win on marketplaces? Like what are the key things that you would say, take these away and we can really build off of them?
Yeah, I think what we've seen, and we've seen consistent parallels across the majority of brands that we've worked with, is one is hit the market hard, as we can emphasize. Whether that's from a crowdfunding standpoint and you already have backers to leverage, like JC's, the powerful email list that we're building, or the current backwards that we've built this relationship with. But the idea of just hitting the market hard and accelerating as quickly as possible is just something that you need to see on Amazon. Same with other marketplaces. One thing that we've seen a lot of brands usually don't get right is how they tell their story, or going beyond just some sort of creative thought process. A lot of products, specifically on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, there's an explainer piece to it, which is why videos are just so powerful when it comes to that lead generation and actually getting your first backers. The issue that comes with, let's say, Amazon or another marketplace is it's someone else's ball court, right? Same with Amazon. You're playing in a different home field advantage. So making sure that you can use whatever landscape a marketplace like Amazon gives, whether that's images, whether that's an area for written copy, we just need to think about how to actually tell your story. So specific products that need some sort of explaining process, we need to think that within the confinements of Amazon or Walmart or Target, how do we actually make sure that you, or as a customer, understand the product, understand the use cases and why it's so valuable? And it segues into even the idea of going beyond videos. Videos and a kind of that initial production for crowdfunding are incredibly powerful, but marketplaces require a whole different science behind it. So with JC's team, with some of the crowdfunding campaigns that we're actively working with, is we have to take some of that, but almost Amazonify it. Yeah. There's nuances that make a successful product on Amazon or another marketplace. So we put this in parallel. And I think lastly is just investing in the right partners, just making sure that you have everything in check. Working with a team like ours, for example, or a team like JC's and MTI's, is just how we make sure that we go to the market properly. That first 30 to 90 days on Amazon, it's almost like the honeymoon period, and it's make or break for a lot of these brands. So just making sure that you have a strategy and execution in place. It follows the same principles as a crowdfunding campaign. Make sure that you're prepared, make sure you have the numbers in place so that when we really go to market, we do it once and we do it well.
So a couple of questions I want to build off of here. The first one was, what's the difference between AMZ Prep and Amazon FBA? I'm gonna try and answer this as a non-biased viewer.
Sure.
So Amazon FBA is your prime delivery service. They deal with your communication when it comes to customer service. They store your products and they take a portion of your revenue based on storage, fulfillment, as well as the sale. Amazon or AMZ Prep allows you to compliantly work through the Amazon FBA rules and regulations, because when you send your product to Amazon, they are very strict on how they want to see that product come into their facility. How quickly can they get it into a shelf and how fast can they get it out the door? Where AMZ Prep plays a very big role is they can help you to prep your product for Amazon FBA. But it doesn't stop there, because AMZ Prep also has a division specifically on the agency side that allows you to, number one, create your listing if you're new to the market, optimize your listing, Amazonify your photography and your videos, and really allow you to build on your keyword search through a market audit and understanding the market. And I wanted to do that, Blair, because I think the English accent just says it all so much better than So we had a question here asking if there is any support to do marketing on TikTok like other agencies. I know AMZ Prep offers this service, especially as a content buyer for TikTok. So very well inclined to working specifically with TikTok. And I'm sure Agency 2.0 really is able to support you in any variety of videography you need when it comes to your campaigns. And then finally, there was a question about how many campaigns are successful. And I think we talked about success at the start. 1 in 5 campaigns are really successful. The rest have either not prepped correctly, haven't done the background research, do not understand their audience. And I think JC touched on a lot of those areas in the recording. So if you didn't get a chance to see the first part of this, please do take the time to do so, because there are some incredible ideas and pinpoints on what makes a campaign successful and how to really invest in the right areas. So moving on to the next area we wanted to talk about is the flip side of this discussion, which is I have a Kickstarter campaign. I want to move to e-commerce, and now I actually have an e-commerce business, but I don't know how I would use crowdfunding to really get the most out of either a new SKU, a new product, or even a product I've been selling for a long time, but I want to go to an audience that's specifically around backers and rewards. So JC, over to you. How do we get a e-commerce business to start exploring crowdfunding?
Sure. Well, once it finalizes to what the actual product will be, maybe it's version 2.0 of whatever you're selling on Amazon, the process really starts with creating the marketing assets that will utilize videos and photos. There's a question about what kind of videos work well on crowdfunding, and it's really become a back and forth, but I would say it's a safe bet to make it more product specific feature heavy. Front load your video with what the product is and does. Supply with graphics. Don't get too cute with interviews. The videos they tend to be watched the first 10 to 15 seconds before somebody checks out and looks at something else. So you really want to pack a big punch in that video. But ultimately, once you have your product, you have marketing assets ready to go, I would put you in about a window of 6 weeks to launch. And really, it's just identifying the story, as Blair well articulated. It's very important to understand what the story is, what you're doing differently with this product, especially with crowdfunding, because some of these backers may never have heard of your brand before, even though you're selling and doing very well on Amazon and your e-commerce store. There's still a chance that they may not have heard of you before. So it's important that we come out the gate and start telling the story about what we're doing differently, what the value proposition is, what type of discounts, and really what you've come up with. What are the top 3 features is typically something we ask all and every new client. Tell us why this is different. Not in a way to just kind of poke holes. I mean, we've all seen Shark Tank. These guys ask all the similar questions, mostly on revenue and sales, but we ask it more on like, tell us about the product and what it does. Because if we don't ask those questions, or at least work together on coming up with great answers and telling a great, compelling story, the community will not respond, and they tend to take over the conversation. This has happened many campaigns in the past where the client kind of had a half-baked idea or prototype, and they didn't have all their tech specs down. They didn't have a lot of the technical answers that the community was asking. And when that happens, they tend to take over the conversation, and the campaign tends to get stuck in the mud. So we want to avoid that at all costs. So basically, have the product that you're really focused on launching, getting marketing assets together right away, because that just takes time, videos and photos. And then certainly projecting as best you can when you can potentially deliver that product, and having a shipping plan in place, really.
And JC, even with that, are you seeing, especially for existing e-commerce businesses, are brands that are doing this actively still pursuing crowdfunding? Or is it usually brand new businesses that are entering the market? What have you seen the mix to be between an existing e-commerce business that already has seen success, whether that's on their website, whether that's a mix of crowdfunding or Amazon in between, versus a brand new business with a prototype or new idea generation?
Yeah, I still think the prototype brand new company is still a majority of the projects launched. I'd say 70%. Again, I'm just pulling it out of my head based on what I've seen. But it's gaining on the opposite side. You're seeing e-commerce brands. You're seeing multiple Kickstarters. There's a company called Peak Design that pretty much have mastered launching campaigns on Kickstarter. Another one is called Tropic Feel, Bobax. These are some more in the apparel space. And now they built such a collection of great products, customer service, delivery, that they launch products now on their own site. They're putting their own little Kickstarter ticker and funds raised on their own website now, because they own their base. And that's what we really want to get to. But I do think it's still, one of the best ways to quickly, lightning speed, build your brand. And you're on a global stage, and there's an opportunity there with a pretty reasonable investment for you to scale who you are really quickly in 30, 60 days, whether it's your first product or whether it's your third or fourth product. You've been killing it on e-commerce, but this is a great opportunity. And we're seeing this with a lot of big corporations share products with us. They don't need Kickstarter or the funds, but they want to tap into that community, and they want to expand their brand for all these early tech adopters. So there's a lot of different things that you could gain as an innovator, but also as an entrepreneur that has multiple products, and launching your next product with Kickstarter, as long as it fits that mold and that audience.
Fantastic. Well, with that being said, we talked a little bit about how to be successful on Amazon and how to be successful in the marketplace world. I think now, from an e-commerce business perspective, what are the factors you see in a successful crowdfunding campaign, as well as for a product launch?
Oh, I mean, I'd say for product launch, the price point on Kickstarter has really grown. We raised $1 million with a product that was $2,000 US, but we've also done it with products that were $25. I think the sweet spot from what we have seen is around $99 to $129, those types of products, because there's still somewhat, of an impulse buy for this community. And then the second component is, I would say again, the innovation. I recently saw, a really cool kitchen product. It was like a salt pepper grinder, but it was like something called the salt pepper cannon.
I think I saw it.
And it did phenomenally well. And what I really like about what's happening is what used to be dominated by your male audience, age groups 35 to 55, it's now expanding. And someone mentioned TikTok. That still relatively that demo is, primarily under 18 years old. I could be wrong. When we do marketing for Kickstarter eCommerce, we're typically going after people that have credit cards and can make that purchase. Getting to that type of demo is really difficult, but which makes TikTok very valuable. But we're always exploring ways to reach new audiences. Pinterest was hot for a while. A lot of our clients ask about YouTube. Etsy is really interesting because, when the Queen's Gambit came out on Netflix, we saw a surge of chess products. And I think, Blair, without telling or naming the product, I know we were chatting about this industry. And it's amazing how a culture now from a show on Netflix, whatever that product focus point was, will start, spreading and spilling into our e-commerce world. And you see the effects almost overnight. So I know with Etsy, the CEO was talking about how much chessboards just surged since like 1980s. They've never seen anything like it. And they're sold out everywhere, which is pretty amazing. So you never know what's going to surprise you, but at the heart of it, it doesn't have to have a Bluetooth or a mobile device app. I really love simple innovation, and the communities, male, female, different age groups will respond to that. As long as everybody loves innovation, what are you doing differently? And simply sometimes too.
JC, are you saying I'm too old for TikTok? I think that.
No, I think you fall right in that demo. Actually,
I got it.
I think you're too old to create TikTok content, but I think you're not too old to watch TikTok content. Every time I switch it on, I'm just seeing all these women dancing around. So I think you're the right age for that. Okay, perfect. So I think with all that being said, and seeing all the questions that came in, this has been one of the most successful events we've actually hosted. So thank you both so much for taking the time. Was there any kind of final comments or processes, talk points that you wanted to bring up before we try and conclude the event?
Go ahead. Yeah, like on my end, nothing specific. I appreciate the time, Imtiaz. I think for brands, whether it's brand new that are trying to get to market, have that plan in place and think about kind of the next marketplaces. We kind of always see brands not proactively thinking about next markets because we see it on that graduating phase of Kickstarter campaigns, but always be one step ahead. I think this is the easiest way to make sure that you find success on these channels, whether that's a crowdfunding campaign all the way to launching your first Amazon product or running a multi-million-dollar e-commerce store. They all have the same parallels in place, but the back process and the not so sexy part of the planning and the back office is incredibly important. So hyper focus on that and you'll be okay. Fantastic.
JC?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Blair. And this, in short, it is a roadmap. It's a journey. It's emotional. I've been lucky to work with many great entrepreneurs and seen them go from, small product, or we helped them with designing the logo, to them being on Shark Tank and winning a $2 million deal with Mark Cuban. And that journey roadmap, what you're about to take, is really exciting, really amazing. And the clients that I saw make it all the way and into Walmart and Target and Best Buy, they were boots on the ground. They did the research. They went over to China. They put all that effort in there. They had a team though as well. And so there's a great trusted partner network here. I can't do what Blair does. It's just there's different specialties. It takes a lot of different teams to get you there. But the reality is, over the years, it's never a better time to launch a product or have your own e-commerce site, or if you're passionate about launching a new product, in any of the different categories that we discussed or more. There's so many great tools, and it's only getting better. That bridge to China really is getting closer and closer to where you're one call or email away to finding how to make your product. And so I just wish everybody the best. It's a really exciting journey, and there's a lot of wealth of resources and teams like on this call and many others that can help get you there. So to definitely do your research and due diligence.
Thank you for that, JC. Thanks for that, Blair. So with concluding the event, audience, thank you so much for your questions. I think your questions have been really, really great. They've allowed us to engage you guys a little bit more and really make things a little bit more live. Thinking about the three businesses that we're speaking today, from an eShipper Plus perspective, think of us as your Expedia for shipping. Think of us as a 360 solution when it comes to logistics, from just consulting you before even starting to manufacture your product, to being able to bring your product into Canada or the US or anywhere else in the world, being able to help you with the clearance, fulfillment, and final mile delivery. We do it all. The AMZ Prep business is really about allowing you to take away the compliance effect of how to send your products into Amazon. So from a prep facility, being able to barcode all your manufactured items as they come in from wherever in the world, to actually getting it into Amazon successfully with compliance, to being able to help you go from e-commerce into a marketplace scenario, work with listings, photography, a review strategy, or SEO keyword search. And one that I love the most is kicking out people that are not supposed to be selling your product on Amazon. I know Blair has done that with a few brands, and it's something that we've heard a ton of people say that we didn't know this is even possible. So that's really great. Agency 2.0 has actually provided us with a promo code, so that's CS 2021. Agency 2.0, as you've heard JC allure to, will help you end to end in starting the thought process of a crowdfunding campaign, all the way to being able to execute it from a marketing perspective, as well as working with partners like eShipper and AMZ to take your shipping and fulfillment to the next level and bringing your product into a marketplace or e-commerce world. We've also got a promo code on the eShipper side. It's crowdfunding without any of the vowels. So you can see that up on your screen, and we'll be able to give you some really great savings. Blair's a little bit tight. He didn't want to give us a promo code, so I'll make a promo code up for him. But you can reach us at any one time, guys. We've put all our details on the comment section, so please take the time to reach out to us. We've got generic emails as well as direct. Any questions, any comments, very, very happy to hear your thoughts. And I want to leave you with one last thought, which is, if you do want to hear, or you do want us to focus on a specific topic or a presentation in the future, we've both got Blair and JC very, very willing to come back on and talk about different things, but we also work with a ton of different partners. So if there's anything specific you want us to focus on, please feel free to comment and let us know, and we'd be more than happy to delve into that. Thank you so much for your time, guys. We had originally 1 hour to speak, but I think we got a lot of content out there. As I said, this is probably one of the best ones we've done so far when it comes to value. A lot of people are interested in this world today and how to accelerate their online growth. So thank you both for taking the time, not only to be here today, but also prep and do all the background work and research that was required. With that being said, thank you so much. Stay safe, and we'll speak soon. Bye-bye for now.
See you guys.
Thank you.